Welcome one and all to another day here at the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola, very lucky to be joined on the program by the host of both Deep Dive as well as Game Busters, Jordan Ewell. Welcome back to the Damage Report.
John, thank you so much for having me.
Very glad to have you here, not only to comment on the news, and we've got a whole lot of that to do, but also to spotlight a little bit of your work. You've been diving into the whole Ticketmaster fiasco recently.
It is a mess. I'm looking forward to talking about it because there's just so many things about that company and what they do that I don't think a lot of people realize. Also, who's involved will upset, I think, a lot of your viewers.
Okay, well, I look forward on a daily basis to upsetting my viewers. And so we're gonna be diving into that in the aftermath. We're also gonna be joined by, in the aftermath, we're gonna be doing a live interview with Annie Wu Henry, who worked on the social media team for John Fetterman, which obviously worked really well and also provided us here at the Damage Report a lot of pleasure through the course of this campaign. So that's gonna be a lot of fun too. So lots to look forward to. In advance of that, please hit the like button and share the stream so people know we're live. And if you want to send us any comments, tweets, or super chats, reach out to Jordan or myself. We'll respond as we go. With all that said, Jordan, are you ready to start the show?
John, I was born ready.
You were born ready. I looked it up. It's on your wiki. Okay, and in that case, this sucks, but let's jump into it.
Anderson Lee Aldrich committed mass murder because you complained about the sexualizing of children, sexually mutilating kids, sexually mutilating children, the sexual mutilation of children, the sexuality of children, people mutilating the genitals of children, running ads on Instagram promoting kiddie porn, kiddie porn, kiddie porn, kiddie porn. It's an endorsement of kiddie porn. They are not doing it for a scientifically defensible reason. They're doing it because they believe in a very specific religious ideology. That's true, it's happening. It's absolutely real, you're not imagining that. The evidence is everywhere and it comes to light on the internet. It is happening. You can't just make up a story because it suits your pre-existing beliefs. Are we jumping to conclusions? Don't think so.
This weekend, a person went into an LGBTQ bar and murdered 5 people, shot dozens others. And while there's still a lot that we're gonna learn about this person and their views and why we did this, we know that this is just the latest in a long string of acts of harassment and intimidation and violence and murder against members of this community. And in the wake of this horrific attack, Tucker Carlson, who has one of the largest audiences in cable news, decided to not only reassure his audience that he is going to continue to vilify this community in the wake of this violence, but also to reassure them that they should be an active participant in that they should still be fired up to attack and marginalize and drive into the shadows and potentially kill members of this community. And as weird as that video was, and massive credit to Kat Abu of Media Matters for putting that together. We've been featuring a lot of her work recently. I thought, well, okay, that's a lot of weird stuff that he had to say. But what, like over the last month, over the last 6 months, like I know that Media Matters does a lot of compilations of stuff. So I asked her, what was the time period for the clips that she put together into that? And she told me, to be clear, every one of these clips came from the first 20 minutes of Carlson's show tonight. What you just saw, constant references to sexualization, like kiddie porn being said 3 to 5 times, all of that came in just his lead-off monologue. He hit the ground running, talking about castration and sexualization and kiddie porn and all of that. And I just wanted to give you just a little bit of her opining because she has to watch a lot of this. She tweeted, "It's so effing weird how often the most watched cable news host in the country talks about children's genitals." And I think that everything gets so normalized. Let's not let this get normalized. It is very weird that people like Tucker Carlson and others, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and all of them, are so constantly talking about and even more constantly thinking about the current state of kids' genitals. That is really, really weird. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's bizarre, and you see this throughout staff at the Daily Wire as well. They obsess over these types of things, and they obsess over things like Disney movies. It's like, look, man, if you don't like a kids movie, just don't watch it. Making your career as a 40 or 50-year-old guy to obsess over these things is probably the most alarming thing of all. And what they're doing, and you saw throughout the right wing, the response to this tragedy was to further demonize this community at large and conflate things that everyone agrees are heinous with a community that is just simply marginalized. That is, they want more outcomes like we saw in Colorado, just like they want more outcomes like they saw at the Pulse nightclub shooting. This is the result that we've been warning about for years now. When you continue to fuel these, these bigoted attacks through your rhetoric, you're only going to see more of them. So it has nothing to do with, again, things that we all agree are heinous, and everything to do with an animus toward the LGBTQIA plus community and what they see as a electoral strategy, which is demonizing and punishing the other. They just tried this in the last election and they failed. But they're still going to try because I think it ultimately feels good for them, makes themselves feel better about themselves. But it isn't a viable electoral strategy. But the Republican Party has largely embraced a politics of hate and running on platforms that just punish marginalized communities for sport.
Yeah, and look, I guess it would be worse if their obvious political strategy worked politically. That would be worse, but I agree, it doesn't appear that it is actually working. But let's bear in mind, that doesn't mean that they're gonna have any incentive to stop, because the thing that fails to achieve their supposed political goals might still benefit them personally and in terms of their careers. And I mean, you could come up with another version of this. Like imagine, this is total hypothetical. Imagine if you had like a show or a network of shows or whatever that claimed to be leftist, but pursued narratives and political strategies that would literally never benefit the left in any way, demonstrably so, but it benefited them in terms of their audience and their money. Well, that would be a similar sort of thing, purely hypothetical, of course. And so to be clear, they all, like, we're not showing this Tucker thing because he is individually the most important person or whatever. It's a demonstration of they're all doubling down. Again, exactly the same as they did following the attack on Paul Pelosi. There's like an hour where everyone's like, is this gonna break through? Is this gonna change things? And no, 3 or 4 hours later, Don Jr. is posting Halloween costumes of the attempted assassin of Nancy Pelosi, and they just roll on. They're not gonna allow any of this to stop them. They're not gonna allow the facts to stop them. We were just covering what, like 2 weeks ago, Matt Walsh on Joe Rogan's show, and he was talking about some gender affirming care that he said numbers in the millions of cases per year. It was a few thousand. They fact checked. Joe Rogan fact checked him. Did the fact that he, in his mind, was magnifying this thing hundreds or thousands of times over change his focus on it on a daily basis? No. This guy who has an audience has continued to make the core of his show, which ostensibly comments on the entirety of politics in America, around the world. They've decided to make it exclusively about their misunderstanding around medical procedures that affect a couple of thousand people in a country of over 300 million individuals. That is a lot of things. It's scary and it's concerning and it's dangerous, but it's also highly, highly weird. Except that it clearly does benefit them. They are generating an audience, they're making money. It might not achieve any of their other political goals, but their personal goals of influence and having a nice house or whatever, it clearly works for that. And if one of the costs of that is that occasionally a bar gets shot up, people get murdered, they are perfectly fine with that. And I'm not hypothesizing, they're demonstrating right now how perfectly fine they are with that trade-off. By the way, on the how weird it is, as part of his monologue, one of the things Tucker Carlson said was, the truth is that some adults in this country, apparently a growing number, have a deeply unhealthy fixation on the sexuality of children. And he thinks he's talking about us. Anyway, the dangerous thing, of course, is that he isn't just opining about this, he is activating his audience to do something about it and actually Cat is an amazing mashup demonstrating how he repeats key phrases before calls to action. Take a look at this.
So to be clear, Boston Children's Hospital is not ashamed of committing sexual mutilation of children. Gender-affirming care is a euphemism for chemical castration. What is gender-affirming care? Well, it's castrating children. It's exactly what it is. The sterilization and castration of children. No one should put up with this. No parent should put up with this for 1 second, no matter what the law says. Your duty, your moral duty, is to defend your children. This is an attack on your children, and you should fight back.
And that is what he continually says about a variety of different topics, but always it comes back to, it's not enough, which it is for many of these commentators, to just constantly talk about these supposed predators who are coming after your kids that wanna kill them or rape them or eat them or whatever. But he continually then says, you need to fight back. Sometimes he goes more explicit than that. And he says, the only moral thing to do is to punch out a person who does that. And so far, all of this is perfectly fine and perfectly legal. He takes stochastic terrorism and has apparently decided as an experiment, how far can I go with this? Because I know that the idea is that I'm not supposed to directly call for violence, but he is testing every day, how much can I actually directly call for violence in the immediate aftermath of violence and get away with it? And so far the answer is he can say literally anything he wants. And it doesn't matter how many Molotov cocktails get thrown or how many bands of Proud Boys show up outside of a drag queen story hour with AR-15s. Doesn't matter how many bars get shot up. He can say literally anything he wants and get paid millions upon millions of dollars to say it. Any other thoughts, Jordan?
No, I think that's it. This is the outcome that they want. You see it in how often they repeat things. Just, we have an example of this. We have precedent for this even at Fox with George Tiller. Bill O'Reilly talked about him repeatedly on a primetime cable show until someone walked into his church and shot him and killed him. This is the outcome they want because they know it works. They know they can work their fan base up into a frenzy. They know they can lie to them. And they know they can smear their enemies so successfully that people will literally kill them. This is what they want. It has always been mind-boggling to me that anybody still advertises on that show. But I think it also just shows how hollow a lot of this corporate social responsibility ultimately is. They don't care. They just want to make a profit. So that's a totally different conversation. But when you have someone who is repeatedly saying things like this to try to inspire attacks on a children's hospital, to gay bars, to anyone else in that community, you show what their MO ultimately is. It's just to harass, to harm, to punish their opponent. And I'll remind you, this is somebody who freaked out, had a meltdown, and called the police because an activist group knocked on his door.
Yep. Yeah, he freaked out because a guy talked to him at a Bass Pro Shop. Anyway, look, I guess it's some consolation that this doesn't seem to be the great activator of electoral change that they thought it was. A lot of Republicans get super freaked out about it, and they haven't necessarily won the Senate on it. They've made school board meetings effectively not able to function. They're shutting down libraries around the country, which is fun, and occasionally getting people shot up. On the other hand, maybe there's another silver lining. We should remember that largely, and this is not true of all of them. One of the reasons they decided, okay, what are we gonna do? I guess trans people. I guess we're going to try to absolutely destroy every trans person. They would have preferred to just keep attacking gay people, but they've apparently looked out across America and realized, okay, I guess we can't necessarily do that. There's still plenty of homophobia, let's be clear about that. But we can't make our entire electoral strategy on that. And the thing is, while there was so much damage that was done by that, when you attack something constantly, you also shed light on it. You make it harder for people who are not on your xenophobic, violent side to just pretend that group doesn't exist. You force them to learn about this group. It's possible that is happening right now with the trans community. Trans community is something that largely the media never spoke of more than just a couple of years ago. And now reasonable people will be required to do what they probably should have done anyway, which is recognize that this community exists. Talk about it a little bit, maybe put some people from the community on the news. And so it is possible that, in doing this multi-year culture war attack against the trans community, it might lead to more recognition and acceptance of the community than we would have had if Fox had not decided that this was how they were gonna butter their bread. Unfortunately, along the way, a lot of people are gonna be harassed, a lot of people are gonna lose their jobs, and a lot of people are gonna lose their lives. So, Jesus, what a country, what a country. Well, we were talking about the difficulty in winning elections based on this stuff. So to continue to try to do that after the midterms, you'd have to be one of the dumbest people in the country. And so enter Herschel Walker. Let's jump to this video.
I'm Riley Gaines, a 12-time NCAA All-American.
And I'm Herschel Walker.
For more than a decade, I worked so hard. 4 a.m. practices to be the best. But my senior year, I was forced to compete against a biological male.
That's unfair and wrong.
A man won the swimming title that belonged to a woman, and Senator Warnock voted to let it happen.
Warnock's afraid to stand up for female athletes.
Herschel Walker stands up for what's right.
Okay. The idea that Herschel Walker, in literally any sense, stands up for what's right is ridiculous. She might be the only person in the country that believes that, but that is Herschel Walker. In the few weeks he has to win over voters after the Republican losses in the midterms, he has decided he is going to take a student athlete from a different state. She's not even from that state, to talk about a competition in a different state against a trans athlete from a different state and make his quest to enter the Senate about trans athletes in sports. And so thankfully people are pointing out how horrendous this is. Cap Action has a great tweet about the fact that he's running this ad, making it impossible for people not on the Republican side to miss that this is happening. GLAAD, by the way, put out a statement saying airing this kind of rubbish under the guise of a political campaign was already deplorable enough, but in the wake of Saturday night's massacre at Club Q, it's simply unconscionable. And that's the thing, this stuff was disgusting last week, but it is particularly terrible to see them going forward with this stuff, knowing the cost of it. By the way, that athlete, Riley Gaines, who had to compete against Leah Thomas, who there's no reason any right wingers should know who Leah Thomas is, but literally every single one of them do, did end up tying with Leah Thomas for 5th. Riley Gaines wasn't even close to winning that race. By the way, that means that 4 women beat Riley Gaines. Also means 4 other women beat Leah Thomas. Weird that they didn't focus on that in the ad, because you damn sure come away from that ad thinking that Leah Thomas won that race, beating Riley Gaines, who would have in some hypothetical world have won the race if not for Leah Thomas. None of that is true. Neither of them were even close to winning. And the results of that race directly undercut their argument, which is, well, how could we ever beat an athlete like this? Clearly, a bunch of them did. Seems like Riley Gaines, you should have practiced a little bit more. You should have trained a little bit harder. You should have done some more cardio, and then maybe you would have been able to win the race. Maybe wasting your time running around with the whatever's left of Herschel Walker is not the best way to succeed as an athlete. But Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say that her origin story is having to share 5th place, and her big complaint from this was that she didn't get a trophy at the event. They had to mail her a 5th place trophy because they didn't expect 2 people to tie for 5th. So that's where this all started. She didn't get a 5th place, I mean the equivalent of a participation trophy. She didn't get a 5th place trophy at the event. It had to get mailed to her, and that's what started this. So I don't feel bad. And like you say, the ad makes you think that Leah Thomas just crushed the competition and it was totally unfair, and it wasn't. And later on, I mean, Riley Gaines has been making the rounds in right-wing media for a while. About a week or 2 ago, she was on Tucker Carlson complaining about this again, and said, and they both agreed, this is the equivalent of blackface. They compared Leah Thomas competing in this event to doing blackface, which they thought was hilarious, and they laughed about it, and they both agreed this was definitely the same thing, which, as you and all of your viewers know, it is very much not the same thing. That's just what they went forward with. I also don't understand how this is going to be a viable electoral strategy. Like, you want people to look, the WNBA, women's sports, unfairly has been a joke, especially to a lot of conservatives. It's been a punchline for years. I don't think that should be the case because the NBA is fun to watch, especially women's sports. We want to talk about one of the best women's teams in the world. It's the US women's soccer team. So I don't think we should make it a punchline, but now you want people who have been treating it like a punchline for years to suddenly care about women's collegiate swimming. I don't care. I don't care. I don't see how that's a big electoral issue. How does that help people in Georgia make ends meet? How does that help people in Georgia get health care? How does that help them pay the bills or lower gas prices? That's the issue that was at the top of people's minds throughout the country in the midterms. Now you want them to care about women's collegiate swimming? Good luck.
Yeah, and you, like, if you were gonna try to, as you pointed out, change over from them thinking every single time there's gonna be a joke about how the sports are awful or whatever, the things that Republicans always say. Like, maybe you could come up with one other thing having to do with women's collegiate sports that you care about. Like, you could do the trans thing and equal pay, or so, like, you could pretend that you actually care about this topic, but they don't even care enough about the topic to pretend. Briefly, they don't even care enough to find an instance of it in their own state. Herschel Walker's not the only one that has tried to make their entire campaign specifically around a swimming meet that happened a long time ago. This is, again, everything gets normalized. There have been instances in, for instance, Professional Magic: The Gathering, where people have cheated in their matches. Imagine if the gubernatorial race in California hinged on someone taking a stance on a person who strangely top decked exactly the card they needed in Magic. That is exactly what this is about. Like, the fate of this swim meet is not what's gonna determine whether the people of Georgia have health insurance or can retire with dignity. That's not actually how life works. And we can make the case, and I think a lot of the Raphael Warnock's side will make the case. In this case, I think we don't even need to make the case, because I think it's pretty clear that Herschel Walker doesn't have any answers to any actual problems facing Georgia. This didn't work in the midterms. Why would it work now? Anyway, with that said, we're gonna move to our first break. When we come back, Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and turns out this Thanksgiving is gonna be a little bit different than past ones for a lot of American families. We're gonna talk about why after this. Okay, everybody, let's talk about some birds and some stuffing. Let's jump into this.
So the votes are in. They've been counted and verified. There's no ballot stuffing. There's no foul play. The only red wave this season is going to be a German Shepherd Commander knocks over the cranberry sauce on our table. I hereby pardon chocolate and chip.
Okay, I like the thing about the dog and the cranberry sauce. That's actually, like, if you're gonna have, folksy old Joe Biden, that's the sort of line he should be giving. Why they named the turkeys chocolate and chip, that seems weird. And I will say that I don't want turkeys to needlessly die. But if you are going to do this pardoning the turkey tradition, you have to occasionally mix it up and not pardon them. Like, I'm not saying constantly, but 1 out of 7 years, he should whip out a sword and he should kill the turkeys, right? Because otherwise, it's just rote. He's going through the motions. We know what's gonna happen. I don't want any harm to befoul any fowl, but I don't know. It's a weird thing. Why do we go through these motions with the pardoning the turkey? I don't know. I'm curious what you think, Jordan, because I know you're not interested in a lot of this pageantry of the White House and all that.
Yeah, I never understood this tradition. It's very weird. But yeah, I think if we're gonna go for a twist ending, have him actually, like, I don't want to see him kill one, but like, mix it up, kick it to the Supreme Court and see if they grant a stay of execution, or just like, so the Supreme Court decides like, no, this turkey has to be put down. Just get the other branches involved. Why not? Not a fan. I think it's kind of a waste of time. But like, I did like that. This is credit to speechwriters and comms team. Good to work in. Just another dunk on Republicans, just totally airballing this election.
Yep.
And then their whiny disingenuous cries over, election fairness and stolen elections going back years now. That was nice, but overall, it's this whole thing has always struck me as a big waste of time.
Yeah, the only thing about and I'm being Buzz Killington or whatever, but when he makes the joke about like the claims of like fake elections and stuff, like that's funny at first, but like Trump is gonna run again. Like you guys could like actually investigate him. Like you could do something about the crimes that he's done. Like I get that it's a joke or whatever, but it's also not a joke in a very real way. There's lots of Republicans. Like Carrie Lake could be the vice president in a couple of years. So maybe take it seriously. Anyway, I don't care too much about the tradition. The reason we wanted to talk about this was, while some economic indicators have been improving, the price of gas has been falling, that sort of thing. And some of the most recent reportings of inflation have been a little bit better. Things might be moving in the right direction there, although hold on that. Inflation and the high cost of a lot of things, including groceries, are affecting a lot of families this Thanksgiving. Apparently, many people are considering changing up the old Thanksgiving tradition and just going to a restaurant. Not out of preference, but just because it's significantly cheaper. And here is why. So apparently, there are a number of different mom and pop restaurants that are getting massive amounts of advanced food orders. Some of as much as $65,000 for a single restaurant. So that's good economically for them, I suppose. But it is, for the first time in decades, more economical to dine out on Thanksgiving Day than to shop for, cook, and then clean up. So the cost of food away from home has increased by almost 6% this year over last year, but it's nearly 10% for groceries at the grocery store. And it's not like Thanksgiving is a cheap meal to begin with. And so I can sort of understand why some would be willing to forego the tradition and instead just go eat a meal at a restaurant, which is perfectly fine. It's just not my preference. And I don't want that sort of thing to be forced on people by bad economic times. Obviously, this is one of the most minor of the economic consequences of the way things have been the past few years, but it's even hit Thanksgiving now, Jordan.
I don't know. I'm not a big tradition person on this kind of stuff. And I know this is moments like this are when the right feels like they have a lot of runway, because it can, that people do appeal to tradition, and in some ways it is effective. Like they do it with so many different things. And I feel like they're going to hit this, if they haven't already. I try to ignore them as much as I can. As we get closer to Thursday, they're going to hit this like, the just distinct American tradition of sitting around the table with the big turkeys being ripped away from us by Joe Brandon. And it's just like, I kind of don't care, man. Doing the dishes sucks, cleaning up sucks. It's like, it's just all stuffy and like uncomfortable all day. You're sitting there in your nice clothes all day. It sucks. I like just like a relaxed approach. Just hang out, man. Give me pizza. I don't care. I just want to be with my friends and family. That's it.
That sounds good. Maybe a turkey pizza. But I love that Jordan is demonstrating like reactionary politics via laziness. Like I'm gonna tear down the establishment because I don't want to do dishes. Whatever. Anyway, yes. I don't care about the tradition in that like whiny way that you're describing, but it's nice to have family occasionally get together. I've been lucky so far that my family get-togethers haven't totally devolved in the Trump era into the way that some unfortunately have. But anyway, let this just serve then as a reminder that there is still a lot of work to do to get the American people back to just the economic standing they were in prior to the pandemic, which was not good even then, but we've lost ground since then. And unfortunately, the ability of even if the Democrats were inclined to do something, which shouldn't be assumed, with the Republicans taking over the House, even the ability to pass some sort of legislation to help out. If we get hit by a really dark winter in terms of the pandemic, you think stimulus is coming with a Republican House and a Democratic Senate? So I do have a lot of fears going forward. Last week, abortion activists in Ohio have said that they are going to be trying to get a protective measure passed via ballot initiative in that state to amend the Constitution of Ohio to protect abortion rights. And I think there's a good reason they would push for this and have faith that it might work, because during the midterms in 5 different states, ballot measures were passed that either enshrined abortion rights into the Constitution or stopped an attempt to take away those rights in the same fashion. And so it's been clear when you ask the American people in special elections and in the midterms, they want abortion access protected. And so in advance of that, Ohio Republicans are saying that they're gonna make it harder to pass ballot initiatives. They have apparently no faith that they can actually convince conservatives to turn out in Ohio. They don't think they can win people over. They know how out of touch they are on these and other topics. And so if democracy is not working for you, just kill it, set it on fire. They're done with it. They've apparently, they're moving to require a 60% majority to pass ballot initiatives rather than a simple majority. So effectively, they've created a filibuster for direct action by the citizenry. Anyway, it said their argument for this, by the way, is that it would stop special interest groups from influencing changes to the state constitution. Sure, that's what you're worried about. Anyway, we'll see if they're successful in doing that. I don't see why they wouldn't be, but I love, Jordan, how often when the people are very clear about what they want, how comfortable Republican state legislators and governors feel in just flipping them the bird and doing what they want anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, ballot initiatives and referendums are one of the few remaining avenues for direct democracy in this country. So naturally, that's what Republicans want to destroy. We don't have an adequate and sufficient and fair representation in Congress or in state legislatures relative to people's policy preferences. So referendums and ballot initiatives are one way that we can achieve the ends that we want. And think back to historically how that has been used in Ohio. When Kasich took over as governor, what he did was push a bill that would effectively break up public sector unions. That was deeply unpopular. That included higher education, schools, fire departments, police departments. That one's kind of good, break those up. But across the board, generally speaking, it would have devastating consequences for workers in public sector unions in the state. He was doing this at the same time that Scott Walker was doing it in Wisconsin. Ohio voters took that to a referendum, became issue 2, and overwhelmingly rejected it and overturned what Kasich had done to break up public sector unions. So that's one way that Ohio voters have voted to change things about the system. It has nothing to do with special interests. The special interests influencing how state laws are written in Ohio comes in the state legislature. It's the people who are saying that they don't want that happening are the ones who are working with special interests to change Ohio's laws. This is happening throughout the country. I think we need to fight back. And I think people really need to understand the value and power you have with ballot initiatives and referendums.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I want to transition from this into a little test of the audience. So you've been following American politics for a while. Many of you maybe for multiple cycles. So here's a little test for you. So you already just saw when a ballot measure is passed or might soon be passed, we know what they do. They just legislate against it or they ignore it. Corruption ballot measures have been completely ignored. Efforts to give the vote back to people who'd previously served prison sentences in Florida, they just don't allow it to happen. Okay, so that's on the ballot measures. Okay, what about this? Now imagine a state where the Republicans control the state government and Democrats win a race at the state level, okay? What happens then? What do they do in that case? When democracy has been allowed to proceed and they've chosen a Democrat in a place that Republicans control the state legislature, anyone know the answer? Okay, I'll tell you, they strip them of their powers. That's what they've done in a number of different states and they're doing it in Ohio. Democratic affiliated candidates have won control over the state board of education in Ohio. And within 1 week, Republican lawmakers are already moving to strip it of its powers. And it's especially ridiculous in this case, where again, Republicans have been trying to run on this, take over the school boards, fill it with Karens, get everyone involved, look through every single book, try to find anything that makes you briefly uncomfortable, and then set it on fire. Well, the voters of Ohio didn't buy that, and they chose Democrats, so now the Republicans are trying to strip them of their power. As of right now, the board is responsible for what K through 12 public education looks like in the state. What they want to do though is strip members from developing education policy, establishing financial standards, and implementing programs. Republican State Senator Bill Reinicki says the Department of Education needs a massive overhaul, but it's just to improve student success. That's what we need. And so they're gonna strip everything down from this group so they would only be left with selecting the state superintendent, licensing teachers, handling staff disciplinary issues, and making school territory transfer decisions. So all of the policy stuff, all of the curriculum stuff, all of that will be gone because the people of Ohio had the temerity to choose Democrats. Jordan, thoughts?
It shows what Republicans' ultimate game is, and that is just to control everything in perpetuity. They don't want a fair election system. They don't want a peaceful transfer of power from the presidency down to the local level. They don't care. They want to take control, inflict, and affect everyone with their, fringe views. That's just what they want. So it's frustrating to see as someone who grew up in Ohio, knowing how much better the state could be. But it's just totally corrupt and antithetical to these core ideas that people understand about our government, how our government should work, and how our elections should work.
Yeah, it's a war on democracy. That's what it is. Like, if democracy is not delivering the outcomes they want, they are done with it, and they couldn't be any clearer. It has led to the way that they only accept actual elections when it benefits them, and they cry foul if they lose, even if it's completely understandable why they lost. They're not fans of the ballot measures. They're stripping away powers using. So basically, one of the foundational flaws in our system of government that's baked into it is there is always going to be a couple of things that they can keep control of, either because of the unrepresentative nature of the Senate or gerrymandering or whatever. And they will use those last remaining things to stop the other side from accomplishing anything, even if they win overwhelmingly. So in a lot of these states, you need to win a massive percentage of the voters to even have a majority. We know that they can use the filibuster to stop things in the Senate. Even if they lose that, they've got a majority that's gonna be very durable on the Supreme Court for a long time. This unrepresentative baked in structure is going to allow them to stop us from proceeding for potentially a long time going forward. It makes the task of actually translating what people want into action far, far more difficult than it needs to be. Anyway, with that said, we are gonna take a second break of our hour. When we come back, we're gonna give you a bit of an update on Alex Jones's efforts to evade responsibility for what he's done, as well as another person being allowed back onto Twitter. We'll tell you who after this. By the way, I have been to relatively few professional sporting events in my life, at least like the big team ones. I've done like a lot of like tennis tournaments and soccer and stuff like that. But one of them, as a young kid, I got to go to a Whalers match. That was fun. That was our local team, way back. That dates me. Anyway, with that said,
hockey games are just like the best. They're like the most exciting, intense experiences. They're great.
Yeah, well, and especially if you're growing up in the era when I did, when like the Mighty Ducks was the coolest sports thing as a kid, other than maybe the Sandlot. But the Mighty Ducks was very cool. So going to see hockey, it's like, oh my God, it's like the movie. Anyway, with that said, let's talk about some news. We'll get to more live event coverage later on. But first, this. Thanks to multiple lawsuits, Alex Jones owes a lot of money to the families that he has repeatedly defamed when it comes to the massacre at Sandy Hook. How much money? It's basically infinite money. I don't know. It's a lot of money. And he is currently doing everything he can to make sure that they get as little of it as possible. And take a look at some of the strategies he's using. So he's apparently been moving millions of dollars out of his company, Free Speech Systems, and into companies controlled by himself, friends, or relatives. This is the result of a Washington Post analysis of financial statements, depositions, and other court records. And because of this, those funds might be out of the reach of the Sandy Hook plaintiffs unless something is done. And here's how that's functioning in practice. Between August 2020 and November 2021, Free Speech Systems signed promissory notes, essentially IOUs, for $55 million to cover what it said were past debts to a company called PQPR Holdings that Jones also owns, by the way, with his parents. So that company, which is managed by Jones's father, a dentist, had bought tens of millions of dollars in supplements, like Gorilla Brain Fuel and dick hardening gel and stuff, that Jones eventually then sold on his show. A lawyer for Free Speech Systems has said in court that the debt accrued unnoticed due to sloppy bookkeeping, which admittedly I buy. That doesn't mean he should be able to transfer the money over. Again, it's still just his family's obligations. In addition to that, this year he started paying his personal trainer, which, let's just stop there. Alex Jones is a personal trainer? Whatever that personal trainer is making, it's too much. Anyway, what they're making is $100,000 a week so that they can help ship supplements and other merchandise. Now, why his personal trainer is helping to box up and ship his brain fuel, I don't know, but $100,000 a week seems like a lot. In addition to that, a company managed by his sister was paid $250,000 as a supplier or vendor. God only knows what that is for. Basically, this is Brewster's Billions, but it's Alex Jones just trying to give anybody connected with him the money, either so that he can eventually get it back once the heat is off of him, or just to make sure this is his last little injury that he can inflict on the plaintiffs from Sandy Hook by making sure that they don't get the money that they're owed. Jordan, what do you think?
John, there are a couple questions in the chat. Could you repeat what kind of gel specifically is being sold?
Hey, these are the things he sells. I don't choose his merch. Okay, he does. We sell these. Okay, we don't sell anything you're supposed to inject. I don't know. I will say this. It apparently brings in a lot more money because that guy's made hundreds of millions of dollars selling, ground up chimpanzee and everything. But anyway, proceed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a way that he and like so many other people who have been accused and convicted or found to have engaged in any wrongdoing try to exploit this system because it's just rare that anybody with power or influence or anything is actually held to account. So the next step is, if you are one of the unlucky ones, how do we beat this? How do we move our money around? How do we fake a bankruptcy? Johnson & Johnson has done it. Many others have done it. I mean, the Sacklers are never gonna face accountability apparently. And now Alex Jones is doing it. They just move their money around. We shut this company down. Oh, wow, what do you know? All of our assets are in another company. Guess that's not the one that was found liable. It's just an exploitation and a middle finger to the legal system. But people with influence and power just typically get away with it, which is deeply unfortunate. I feel bad for the victims here.
Yeah, and this is the sort of thing where, as a regular person seeing this, it seems like this should be pretty easy to solve. Just go take that money. That's his money. That's what it is. It's still in his family. It's not sacred all of a sudden. He moved it to evade it. It feels like this should be able to be tracked. Any scheme that the addled, warped mind of Alex Jones can cook up, our legal system should be able to track. I think they should be able to get ahead of this barely sentient pork roast, okay? I think they should be able to figure this one out. The question is, will they have the willingness to, and on what time frame? It already took years and years and years to get him to stop defaming these families. It might be that some of the Sandy Hook families are willing to continue to pursue this, but how many years or potentially decades are they gonna have to do this? Is Alex Jones even gonna be alive before he finally needs to pay off these people? His arteries and heart are ready to pop at any second. So it is entirely possible that he will just fully evade responsibility and culpability in this. Anyway, hopefully they'll get something. They certainly are owed that for all of what they've experienced. Okay, with that, let's turn from Alex Jones to potentially someone even worse. Elon Musk has been on a spree trying to reassure the right wing that he does actually have their back with this Twitter thing. He hasn't been able to deliver on all of his promises to them, but some he is making good on, including giving back access to the few right wingers who had been banned permanently from the platform. He already let Trump back on, and now Marjorie Greene's personal Twitter account is back. And I want you to just bear in mind as we get into what she's doing with that account once again. While her personal account had been banned, her congressional account was allowed to continue. This is not like with Trump where any account he tried to tweet from immediately got banned. She's been tweeting nonstop from her congressional account. And if you follow her congressional account, there ain't a lick of difference between that and what her personal account was. She could already say whatever crazy things she wanted. Now she can do it from 2 accounts. And here is what she had to say in celebration of the banning being taken away. I'm the only member of Congress the unelected big tech oligarchs permanently banned, which might say something more about you than about them, but sure. On January 2nd, they violated my freedom of speech, which has nothing to do with the actions of private companies. One would think she'd have had time as a congresswoman to eventually read the Bill of Rights, but she has not. She says, my account is back, go follow blah, blah, blah for MTG Unfiltered. And then she did a winky face just in case you had any food in your stomach. That's now flying across the room. Okay, so by the way, really fast, is Elon Musk a big tech oligarch now, Marjorie Greene? I mean, he's the richest person in the world and he has sole control over a massive social media platform. I have a feeling you probably won't lump him into that group. But here's what she's been doing with her renewed access to Twitter. She's been on a retweeting spree of post-millennial things about her, one of which has her spreading conspiracy theories about the death of George Floyd. That's one of the first things she did when she got back on it, was start to lie about how George Floyd died. She then gave Alex Jones for being right about something she's calling the information war. I don't know what that is, and I don't know what her position is. When Twitter is controlled by a right winger and Facebook is controlled by a right winger, I don't know what more control over social media they could possibly have. She attacked big tech communists for silencing the voices of people who detransitioned and speak out against the medicalized gender transitions of children. So she's using it to demonize the trans community once again. And just as a reminder, the last tweets of hers that are still up on her account from before she was banned include her spreading COVID misinformation. That doesn't bother me as much. I mean, I don't like misinformation, but it's not like anything other than Marjorie Greene cultists are gonna follow her advice and inevitably needlessly die from COVID. So that's really for her side to police. Anyway, Jordan, she's back on, and I can't imagine what could possibly get her banned again under Elon Musk.
Yeah, what she thrived on with that account was saying the most outrageous things, posting just totally blatant lies to get attention, because it helped get her more media coverage, even generate outrage cycles, which brought her more followers and attention. It was just this never-ending cycle. Her getting suspended, I didn't really care about. She still had her official account. I don't think this was like totally silencing some member of Congress, which would be just a bold step. It wasn't that big of a deal. She knew what she was doing. But the thing is, in addition to her, there's all these other people in the right-wing world who had been suspended over the last several years for heinous stuff. Twitter just didn't want that on their platform. I understand why they wouldn't want that on their platform. And they've all been reinstated. But for them, they're doing the same thing, saying and doing heinous things to get attention, to generate coverage, generate outrage cycles, and rinse and repeat over and over again. And they would build up followings by doing this. They're all back now. While they don't have power in Congress, they're getting more attention in the mainstream, which I think is unfortunate. So it's like, it's tough to even talk about and cover, because it's like, I really don't want to give them what they want, because that they thrive on that. There's people who, have made their way onto like daytime television doing this, which is deeply unfortunate. I don't want to name them, but like, it's just a method that the right sees as effective, because you want to cover both sides. Ultimately underscores a conversation people need to have about, objectivity in media, and whether we really do need to give people with totally fringe beliefs the same platform and space in coverage on things where someone's just presenting the truth, even if it's inconvenient for the right. So it's frustrating to see all these people back, but that seems to be what Elon's game is, just to win over and curry favor with the right.
Yeah. Well, claiming as he did today that he's not doing anything to benefit the right. It's the moderate wing that he is trying to appeal to. Meanwhile, he literally only tweets at right wingers. He's just unbanning right wing. That's what he's doing. I mean, it's super clear. It couldn't be any clearer. Yeah, I agree. Look, in response to what you're saying, it does reassure me at least that these people are successfully grifting for themselves, and there are consequences for that. But it doesn't seem, again, to be a very successful electoral strategy. So I'm a little bit less worried about that, but we will continue to keep that on our mind as we go forward. With that said, that is the end of our first hour. Thank you to everyone on the linear platforms or on the podcast. But we do have a lot more show to go, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.